Howdy folks, welcome back to World of Tanks with the mighty Jingles. This is Danark in his AT-15 British Tier 8 tank destroyer. We're joining him relatively early on in this Tier 8 battle on fjords. He's heading down for the traditional heavy tank slugging spot on the corner of the peninsula, right down here to the south. But looking at the tanks that are already there and the tanks that are coming to this corner, it's just going to be too crowded. So he's decided he's going to... he spent a lot of time getting up here. The AT-15 is not a particularly fast machine, but you're going to be fighting for kills on that corner. There are far too many people who have already gone that way. So he decides to turn around, head back, drive up the middle. Now the AT-15, I really do like this machine. The 20-pounder gun that it gets has very, very good damage per minute. The frontal armour of the tank, well, it's not as strong in its own tier as the AT-2 is, for example, at tier 5, but it's still pretty good. But don't let that frontal armour fool you into thinking that this is a machine that should really be going toe-to-toe with enemy tanks at close range. You can do that, but it's difficult to be successful. The closer you are to enemy tanks in an AT-15, the easier it is for them to get around you, and the AT-15 is very slow, and it doesn't turn particularly quickly either. I find the best use of the frontal armour on this machine is to use it in cooperation with the high rate of fire and DPM of the gun. Other tank destroyers that have fast firing, low alpha damage gun don't have this kind of frontal armour, so you can stay at medium to long range, working that gun and just weathering the return fire, because the enemy tanks don't have the accuracy at medium to long range most of the time to hit your weak spots, which is the hatch on the top. You get this tank in close and you're just making it easier for them to bypass your armour completely and put shots into your commander's hatch. Danark's patience coming around the rear is about to reap dividends. And just look at the rate of fire of that 20-pounder gun. And the rest of his team should easily be able to handle that T-34-3. Meanwhile, a wild FCM-50T appears behind him. Now technically this is a heavy tank, but it weighs 54 tons, has 120mm of frontal armour, and the AT-15 weighs 60 tons and has 225mm of frontal armour. And yeah, heavy tank? Not really. FCM-50T is a good tier 8 premium tank, but don't go ramming AT-15s in it. No good will come of it. If you really do want to upset AT-15 drivers, one of the spots to aim for is a spot that you would normally never consider shooting at on an enemy tank, and that's the gun mantlet. It is a heavily armoured gun mantlet, but tier 8, 9 and certainly tier 10 tanks can penetrate it. And there is an armour hole behind it. There is no armour behind the gun mantlet. High explosive of a high enough calibre, in particular, will wreck the gun and possibly kill the gunner of the AT-15 if you fire it directly at the gun mantlet of this little tank destroyer. AT-15 drivers, I apologise for giving away your secrets. Meanwhile, this game is not going particularly well. They are being capped by 2 enemy tanks, and the slowest tank on the team is the first one to turn around and react. Now, to be fair, we do have a T-34 who has also seen the threat and is coming back. However, the enemy team have an Su-152 who's positioned himself perfectly to intercept anybody coming back to try to defend the cap. He's just killed the T-34. Meanwhile, we've got a really brave tier 6 heavy tank driver, the KV-1S, who's come to back up Danark's AT-15. But the KV-1S is on very, very low health. So he's reset the cap on the Super Pershing. Now all he has to do is reset the cap on the T-34-1. And he needs to kill the T-34-1 because the T-34-1 is more likely to be able to get around him, outmaneuver him, and shoot him in his sides and rear. So now it's AT-15 versus Super Pershing and enemy artillery. He's constantly being shot at by the enemy FV-304. The artillery took out the KV-1S who was with him. And if this had been any other Tier 8 medium tank in the game, Danok might have been in serious trouble. As it is, he does have a bit of luck in that he didn't get his tracks blown off by this repeated hammering he's taking from the artillery. But he kills the Super Pershing. He manages to avoid taking too much damage from artillery fire, and he wins the engagement. Meanwhile, and this was kind of unfortunate for this SU-152 player, because this guy really did have a good game up until this point. This is the guy that positioned himself to intercept anybody else on Danok's team who was coming back to try to reset the cap. He killed the T-34 Heavy that was coming back to try to reset the cap. He then pushed down to the T-34's position, turned around, blocked the road against an IS-3 and killed him, who was trying to come back to reset the cap. Unfortunately, the length of time it took him to do that meant that he couldn't take advantage of getting shots at Danok's rear, and instead, with his 175mm penetration, 122mm gun, he ended up facing the wrong end of Danok's AT-15 with its 225mm of frontal armour. So, well played to the SU-152. Unfortunately for the SU-152, due to the limitations of the machine he was driving, he wasn't able to capitalise on that bold move that he made in the middle of the map. Meanwhile, all the geniuses on Danok's team who thought it was a fantastic idea to drive across the southern end of the map with their flanks being shot at by T-28 prototypes and SU-152s have now paid the price for their error. Danok is the last one left alive on his team. And while the AT-15 is a good machine, its biggest weakness is its speed, or its lack of speed, because it is not a very good machine at reacting to changing events on the battlefield. On the bright side, however, neither's a T-28 prototype, and it also has horrifically bad side armour. The SU-152 isn't exactly a speed demon either. And if you think about it logically, this was the most obvious spot for these two guys to be. T-28 prototype is even slower than an AT-15. In this sort of situation, the T-28 prototype driver is likely to be positioning his tank in a spot where he can cover as many different approaches to his base as possible without having to move, because the T-28 prototype is really, really slow. The SU-152 is likely, if he's thinking about what he's doing, to position himself in a spot where he can back up the T-28 prototype and take advantage of the weight of numbers. Of course, the downside to picking the most logical spot from which to defend the approaches to your base means that that renders you predictable to somebody who actually knows what they're doing. And Danok knows what he's doing. Now it's one-on-one. And unfortunately, no amount of good shooting and tactical common sense is ever going to make an AT-15 faster than an FV-304. But the cap circle is right there. If he can get into the cap circle first, the FV-304 could be anywhere on the map and can still make it back in time to try to reset. But it's a one-on-one fight. He's got good frontal armour, the FV-304 doesn't do a lot of damage, he just has to get into the cap circle first. He's almost there. Oh shit. And you know, he's already got one Defender medal out of this game, but the AT-15 is just not fast enough to do it again. At the very best, all he's going to get now is a draw. And you know, I'm not going to make you watch the rest of this because it's just too depressing. Let's just skip straight to the end and see the results. There aren't many people out there who are unlucky enough to be able to say they got their Ace Tanker badge in a game that they lost. Danok is one of them. 1686, nearly 1700 XP. On a standard account, there's no premium bonus there. With his Ace Tanker badge, a Radley Walters medal, high caliber, top gun, defender and steel wall in a game that he lost. This game actually took part on a ×3 XP special weekend event. If he'd been running a premium account and had won that game, that would have been 7,500 experience. You probably need some cheering up after watching that, I know I do. So, here to entertain us is Steel Dire Wolf in his Tiger 2. on the airfield map, and he's not in a particularly good situation. He's the furthest forward, in fact he's the only guy in his team down on this side of the map who's actually in a position to fight off the enemy coming around the southern corner. He's got a T-44 on his flank. There's artillery in play, so he can't hide behind that rock behind him. He has to move forward and engage. But he's all alone out here. The only support is way behind him from the snipers in his own base. He's got a Churchill 7, a T-25-2, and an AMX 5100. So, just to fully summarise the situation for those of us who may not have grasped exactly what's going on, Steel Direwolf is in a Tiger 2. He's on 800 health at the moment. He's about to get shot in the ass by the T-44 behind him and be reduced to 635 health. There is a full health AMX 5100 above him that he cannot shoot, and in front of him a T-25-2 and a Churchill Mark 7. And that's what makes this all the more hilarious. Now, I ain't going to sit here and tell you I have never cliff dived an enemy tank, because it is usually pretty funny, but I at least have the common sense when I'm in a top tier heavy not to do it right at the start of a game and end up driving away on 45 health after taking out a tank that was dead anyway. If you're going to do it, at least save it for the last tank that's left alive on the enemy team, not the first one you come across. No, I said not the first. Well, alright, it is pretty funny. Speaking of trolls, the ELC AMX has rear armour that is 10mm thick. Right, you can go to a car dealership and buy a Ford that has thicker armour than this thing. In order to overmatch the armour of a tank, the calibre of the gun shooting at it has to be 3 times greater than the thickness of the armour. The E100 has a gun that overmatches it by a factor of 15, not 3. So can somebody explain to me how shit like this keeps happening? Oh, world of tanks, you so silly. Speaking of silly, this is the only highlight from a recent 4-hour-long, utterly horrific live stream. It's El Haloof, not my favourite map in the game. Tier 10 match, I'm in the T30. We've just lost an E75, we've just lost an E100, we've got a team-killing T110E3 on our team. My other platoon, D75, is running with his tail between his legs, which is actually the smart move, but I decide, screw it, I am going to turn around, I am going to make a stand here. Tonight, we dine in hell. So I'm waiting for that bat chat to come over the top, and oh, World of Tanks spotting mechanics. God damn you. But the bat chat just totally tunnel visions, and he reverses right into my gun, so that was nice. Of course, now I've definitely, been spotted. And here comes a T110E5, and this gun takes a long time to reload, so I have to back up, and back up, and back up, and back up, and take the shot. Now, that is a T110E5. He has 144 health remaining, weighs 54 tons, and is coming around that corner at some speed. I'm in a T30, I have 195 health remaining, and I am in 60 tons of tank. All I really have to do here is stop reversing. Cheers, sucker! The rest of this game was a disaster. I won't make you suffer through watching it. Speaking of dubious game mechanics, this is my good friend Eddie in his AT2. He's just fought a very, very successful defence here on Karelia. The only tank left on the enemy team is a Panzer 1C. He is surrounded. Why are they not killing him? Has peace suddenly broken out on the Western Front? Is this some new German secret weapon? Nah, it's just a World of Tanks map bug. Panzer 1C's inside the rock. You even had a derp Sherman here with a 105mm howitzer who couldn't root him out with high explosive splash damage. That Panzer 1C survived to the end of the match. Well, that's far too much silliness for one video. It's time to get serious again. This is Virtual Warrior 12 in his AMX 13 F3 AM. It's a tier 6 French artillery. Yep, it's an artillery replay. This is the new encounter mode on the new Redshire map. Now, it's probably fair to say that even Virtual Warrior 12 himself would admit that he does make some dubious decisions in this game, particularly in the choice of targets that he goes for. One thing he is not doing by sending this replay into me is claiming that he is the greatest tier 6 artillery player in World of Tanks. He makes mistakes, he knows that. That's not the point of the replay. Virtual Warrior's team have 2 artillery, there's himself and a Hummel. The enemy team have got 3 artillery. Other than that, the teams seem to be pretty balanced. So he's set up, he's turned around. Initially, he's looking directly to the north when the first enemy tank pops up. This is one of the reasons why you do not want to be the first tank spotted on the team when there's artillery in play. Because everybody suddenly stops what they're doing and they turn their guns around and start shooting at you. And that is a very, very lucky M4 Sherman. Spotted, lit up, not moving, everybody shooting at him didn't take any damage. As for Virtual Warrior's shot, despite the fact that it was fully aimed, and only the Hummel and FV304 at tier 6 are more accurate artillery than the AMX-13, that shot didn't even land within a tank's length of the aiming spot. Now the French artillery tends to have a very, very flat trajectory, which means that shots like that, unless they score a direct hit, tend to sail right past the target and barely even land on the same map. British artillery and some of the Russian artillery, they tend to have a very, very high trajectory, in that the shot goes up a long way before it starts coming down, and it's often possible to hit targets even on the other side of cover, in a way that you really can't do with the AMX-13 F3. What that means in game terms is that in this artillery in particular, it's very difficult to successfully land accurate shots on targets that are on higher ground than you because of the flat trajectory of your shell. That Cromwell really, really needs to die. Not only is he capping, he's also killing everything that comes into the cap circle to try to prevent him from capping. Fully aimed shot. Well, it did splash him, even if it didn't penetrate. The Cromwell, unfortunately, gets away. He's on low health, but he's still sitting in the cap circle, and his gun is still in play. And now we've just lost the T1 Heavy, and there are still 2 of them in the cap. Virtual Warrior has almost reloaded. He can still see the Cromwell, and suddenly he gets a better shot. He takes the shot. It actually goes exactly where he aimed it for once, but the Cromwell isn't there anymore. So with the Cromwell off the map, he turns his sights to the other tank that's capping, the T25, but the T25's in a bad spot. He's engaging in a frontal gunnery duel with the Mark I Churchill. The Hummel takes a shot at him and misses. Churchill finishes him off, long before Virtual Warrior has reloaded. That Cromwell is still in the cap, and now nobody has any idea where he is. And then for a couple of seconds, it all goes quiet. The team are jockeying for position. They're actually covering the cap from 2 different sides, but nobody has eyes on what's in there. And then suddenly, big fat juicy Russian heavy tank pops up. Virtual Warrior is fully aimed, he pulls the trigger, shots come in from all directions. Virtual Warrior's shot doesn't land anywhere near him. And since patch 8.6, this is just what it's like playing artillery. Perfectly aimed shots. Just don't go where you aim them. And right there's the Cromwell. And he's not loaded. And he shifts his fire to this KV2 that he really doesn't have a shot at. And when he shifts his fire back and is reloaded, the Cromwell's gone. So he's missed his chance again. Now he starts casting around a bit. There was a Wolverine spotted up here, but nobody can see him. Then the KV2 pops up once again, so he shifts back to aim at the KV2, who is almost 100% artillery safe where he is. He's not going to hit that KV2 from here. While all this is going on, the Churchill has actually pushed up into the cap circle, and the Cromwell is spotted again. Now this is a dodgy, dodgy shot. Remember that flat trajectory? And it actually, once again, goes exactly where he aimed it, but he mistimed the shot. Didn't take into account the speed of the Cromwell, and misses once more. Now the Hummel is indicating that he is going to shoot at the Cromwell. So Virtual Warrior shifts his fire to this KV-2 who's advancing on the Churchill across the middle of an open field. This is a dream for artillery, a huge slow tank advancing in the open. The only way that could be better is if the KV-2 wasn't moving. And finally, he does some significant damage to an enemy tank that needed significant damage done to it. Unfortunately, he's not quite fast enough to get the reload in and prevent that Churchill from taking a colossal amount of damage. And although the KV-2 did hit the Churchill, it was actually enemy artillery that did the lion's share of the damage and got the kill. Our Hummel finishes off the KV-2, despite the fact that he said he was going after the Cromwell. The Cromwell actually got killed by our Hellcat, who's sitting there on 5 kills. The Hellcat and the Stug are in a bad way, however. They're both one-shot kills at the moment. But in a sudden plot twist, the enemy team are complaining that their Su-85B should be reported for being a bot, or at the very least, he's AFK. So all the enemy team actually have left are 3 artillery. So it's 3 artillery versus 2 artillery and 2 tank destroyers, and we're sitting in the cap. So it's not actually looking that bad at the moment. But hold on a minute. One of the enemy artillery is an FV304, the dreaded Bert. And you get an FV304 by crossbreeding a Hummel with an ELC AMX. And here comes the little bastard, screams over the top of the hill, shotguns the Hellcat, dodges all incoming fire, and then disappears, cackling insanely. And then the crying starts in chat. And have you noticed it's always my team sucks? It's never the enemy team was really good. But the plot twists keep coming thick and fast. Bert's going for the Stug. No, that's not the plot twist. You're going to see the plot twist in a minute. A lot of artillery players would take this shot, and yeah, they might kill the 304, but they'd probably kill the Stug instead. No, there's the plot twist. Now, getting shotgunned by an FV304 is nothing to be ashamed of, right? That's what they do. Getting shotgunned by an Su-8. Hang your head in shame. To be fair, that Stug was screwed no matter what they did. There was nothing they could do to help him. And going for the FV304 in that particular situation, even though it might have killed the Stug, could have been the wise thing to do, because that FV304 is the single most dangerous thing left on the battlefield. There was nothing they could do to help the Stug. But there's something they can do, something that an AMX F3 AM is very, very good at doing, almost as good as an FV304, and that's relocating on the battlefield really, really quickly. In fact, a lot of French artillery drivers were probably very upset when the FV304 was introduced into the game, and we're all saying, hang on a minute, that's our job. And now would be the time when a lot of artillery players would be turning themselves around, parking up in front of a rock, loading high explosive, and putting themselves out of their misery. Virtual Warrior 12, on the other hand, is made of sterner stuff. And despite the whining of the Hellcat driver, I think it's safe to say that all of the artillery players in this match were a credit to their profession. Are you ready for another plot twist? The Su-85B is not AFK. Shotgun. Didn't really matter. The Hummel is going for the M37. Dodges one shot. Dodges another shot. He's got to get forward. He's got to get down into the low ground, get below their guns, give himself time to reload. They have both fired, but even though he is going to get the next shot, there are 2 of them there, and the Hummel just fired at the M37 and missed. Now the Hummel's yelling at him, stay there, don't go over the ridge. And he's not going to go over the ridge, he just wants to spot these guys for the Hummel. Maybe the Hummel can splash them, get them both. And then another plot twist. Remember the M37 that the Hummel missed? Yep, he's behind you, and he misses. The Hummel blows away the FV304. Virtual Warrior turns around, barely aims, shotguns the M37. Here comes the Su-8. Here comes the Su-8. He fires. He hits his gun. It cripples the gun, doesn't quite knock it out. He's taking his tracks off. He's going to reload, but he cannot shoot the Su-8 at point blank range or he will kill himself. So instead, he gets the hell out of there and leaves it up to his teammate in the Hummel. And it just goes to show, Artillery players who keep killing themselves at the end of a match just because they're the only ones left are never ever going to get a result like that. Mediocre game though it was, Virtual Warrior 12 was not having a great game, but he stepped up, and when it mattered, he became a hero. As always folks, take care on that battlefield, and I'll catch you next time.